So I wanted to talk about things I see in headlines. I really can't care enough to read the actual articles, I'll be honest, but I like to theorize anyway based on that. So there was news that there was going to be a Resident Evil 1 remake again, and that Resident Evil 5 remake, but then I saw another article saying that's not true, but the leaks about a Resident Evil 0 remake and a Code Veronica remake are more likely. So my opinion now on remakes is firstly, okay, Resident Evil 4 remake to me is a remake. It definitely expanded everything in my eyes, and it still feels like Resident Evil 4 in a lot of ways, but I haven't done a proper review of any of the recent remakes, which I should probably do at some point. But as far as like Resident Evil 2 remake and Resident Evil 3 remake, what I will say is, at least with Resident Evil 2 remake, feels somewhere in between a remake and a reimagining. And I remember talking about it back then when Resident Evil 2 remake debuted, and in interviews like weeks later, Capcom was saying, yeah, we treated it like a reimagining. And it does feel like it falls somewhere between where it wasn't to the extreme of a reimagining. However, I do think if fans like me, fans like us, who were not grounding it in that remake and saying like you have to do it this way, there wouldn't have been that compromise. I think it would have been way different, kind of what happened with Resident Evil 3 remake. And we know how that went down. There's a lot of people, I mean, there's things I like about the Resident Evil 3 remake, but I sure as hell am not going to defend that game. You know, but I do think if there wasn't the pressure from fans to ground RE2 into a remake, it wouldn't have turned out as well as it had. And of course, I still have my issues, and that is something I'm seeing more of in comments from people around all social media, is people starting to see like Resident Evil 2 remake kind of has that similar thing with Resident Evil 3 remake in a lot of ways. So it's a whole other conversation. But as far as a Resident Evil 0 remake, now that is one the irony is that is one I'm saying needs a reimagining. I mean, don't get rid of Billy, but I just think with a Resident Evil 0 remake, you should integrate interactions with Bravo Team and kind of rewrite it so that way you're not rushed into being alone and then put with Billy. There should be interactions, I think, with all of Bravo Team, and Rebecca maybe is, you know, it's not going to be a co-op game, I would think. You know, they're going to change it for that. I don't know. So maybe have her be with Bravo Team for the intro for a lot of maybe the train section, if you're still going to do that, like something with that. There's also like little things, like it's crazy to me that when you look at like the prototype for Resident Evil 0, well, not really the prototype, I guess they call it prototype, but I don't know. It was supposed to be for Nintendo 64, and one of the cool things I liked about it was like when you're on the train, you can see the zombies outside the window and they're moaning and stuff, so it gives you that idea that they are surrounding you and you can't escape. And then for some reason, when Resident Evil 0 came out on GameCube, they didn't put that out there. That was a cool idea. There is this whole cool idea, like if you can do 0, yeah, do an RE1 remake again. And something that I didn't like, I wish, because Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 1 remake were kind of done around the same time, I wish they had integrated some of the ideas more. Like, again, Nintendo 64 version, the prototype of Resident Evil 0, was going to have a thing where Rebecca had more gear on, and as the game progressed, she took off that gear, like the hat and shoulder pads, to what you saw in the original Resident Evil 1. But then also, like, Resident Evil 1 Remake didn't even have Rebecca's dog tag from Billy. Now, you could say she hid it, but I think if she was wearing that in Resident Evil 1, it would have been really cool. So there's just those kind of integrations that, and it goes into, like, why I loved Resident Evil 2 originally so much, like the zapping system, the scenario system, and that integration between like Leon and Claire's story, and how important that was. There's so many, okay, I won't say so many comments, but I remember seeing from time to time people downplaying like Resident Evil 2's zapping system because there's several things that like really don't have an impact. They don't really heighten the scare of, you know, have that video that went viral, for me viral, you know, kind of stalled at the 88,000 views now, but the that stuff, even if it seems insignificant, to me it creates that sense of this is real. The idea that, you know, that the stuff that's going with one character, it's happening with the other character. And that has trickled through the series. There's parts of Code Veronica that have that feel. Resident Evil 6, they tried to reintroduce it. I think it just wasn't done right. But the idea was good, of integrating the different characters' storylines. So that's how I feel, is if you're going to do a Resident Evil 0 remake, I really hope they like retool it to actually tell more Bravo team. Maybe, you know, they're actually at the mansion. There's parts of that. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I haven't put too much thought about it. I remember always thinking about, why don't you have Rebecca in the mansion and stuff? You know, just parts of it somehow integrate that. I don't know. But if you're, redoing RE1 Remake, you could somehow change some of that. And at the end of the day, now people might say like, oh, you can't change RE1 Remake. Well, we already had one Resident Evil 1 Remake. I guess I'd be okay with this reimagined script a little bit and change things up. Because at the end of the day, this is what I'll end it with, is that all these modern remakes, I'll say, with Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, I still consider the original games the canon. It's almost like the remakes are like a movie of the canon of the original games. I will always deem there's no reason for me to change what's canon. So yes, I can play the remakes and have my fun in the way that that is, but to me it's a retelling of an original story, and the original story is still valuable. It's still like right in my head, like that's what's canon, and that's what, like, it's like that's what really happened, you know. So this is how I treat the remakes, and that's why I like with Resident Evil 0 remake and Resident Evil 1 remake 2.0, I think I would be okay with more of a reimagined approach with that. And hell, you know, Resident Evil 2 remake is kind of there, and that's a whole other topic, but I just think that's what I'm gonna say, is I know I honestly can't say it's a reimagining because there's a lot there that feels like a remake, but damn, it is so close to being a reimagined game. And again, with Resident Evil 2 remake, I consider the original canon over the remake, because I feel like that was one of the botched things, was the scenario system, let alone zapping system not existing, with the scenario system. And it just is my opinion, if you're gonna do a remake, you should honor the original. It's partly a game preservation topic as well, that I think there's a lot of people who don't really remember the early original Resident Evil 2, and people might think the zapping system's insignificant, and that's fine. I'm just saying, I think what I tapped into of why I loved the zapping system so much, even though it seems small, it's kind of a world building feeling, and it feels, even if they are, again, small events where you impact the other person's story of what you play in the B scenario or A scenario, it creates that sense of reality. It's another layer that makes it feel more real. So that's my thoughts on that, and that's all I gotta say.